Okay, and we are live with the Brown Bag Business Chat. This is your host, Adam Fout, once again here talking about important things that small business owners need to know. Now, we've been doing a lot of stuff in the past few weeks and really months about social media, but I wanted to go in a little bit of a different direction here and talk about something that most small business owners hope is a problem they have: hiring. Right. So eventually the goal is to grow and hope, sometimes we grow quickly, sometimes we grow slowly. But we've got, I've brought my guest here today, Tripp Braden. Tripp, if you wave and Google will get a hold of your, oh, yeah, it'll get. So
There we go. Are we there yet?
there you go. You got to talk for Google to really believe you.
Oh, now I have to talk. Now you want me to do everything.
Yeah, right. So we've got Tripp here. He is a hiring expert at this point. He's interviewed over 16,000 people for a variety of management and leadership positions in business. And he's going to talk to us a little bit today about hiring and how to go about it in a way that to avoid the hire from hell, which is what we're all really afraid of, is hiring that person that we think is going to work out and then finding out we're stuck with a demon in our office. So Tripp, before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and why you can really help our audience to understand hiring processes.
Certainly. Thank you. And thank you for having me today, Adam.
Absolutely.
Here's who I am. I have kind of an unusual background. I have spent the last 30 years interviewing people from companies and small startup companies to companies like Berkshire Hathaway, who's my longest term client, working with Warren Buffett since 1986 in his companies. I've known him when he was a billionaire.
So, a billionaire. Yeah.
So when you think about it, what I've learned over the years, I've done hiring for recent college grads to hiring for CEOs of Fortune 100 companies. What I want to bring you today, though, specifically is the mindset that you're going to need to bring as a small business owner who's growing. Because I think what happens a lot of times, to be candid, is we try to hire the same way. Every hiring book is really written for big company hiring. There are a few exceptions, but most of them don't really understand what it's like to be in a startup company or a small company who's in a specialty market. So really what I want to give you today is, an overview of some of those things. Now, you probably wonder, how many clients have you had in that size range? Not. Most of them get bigger very quickly. I worked with 25 Inc. 500 companies that have gone from $20 million to over $1 billion in revenue. So the only commonality they have, besides being Inc. 500 companies, is me as a consultant. So for a long time, I was pretty good at what I did.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, great. Okay. So you, like I mentioned earlier, you've interviewed an extraordinary number of people. What insights have you gained from this experience? What have you seen that, because at that amount of people, you obviously some patterns start to emerge. What insights have you gained that you think would be useful for a small business owner?
Adam, even a stone would pick something up after that many interviews. So, I don't think I'm a stone, but I do think there's some interesting patterns that emerge when you start to look at companies. And the one thing I'd stress to the small business owner is this is really the critical skill you have today that you have to master to get to that next level. And the second piece, I'd say, let's go the opposite way, kind of a little contrarian on that.
Sure.
This is your best opportunity to find great employees, because when you start to look at how big companies hire people and take them through processes, they're terrible at it. And they're so bad at it, it costs them hires. So what I'd say to you is, when we get good at this, and that's my goal today, is really to give you some mindset and then ultimately provide you with some ways of looking at things that make it easy to do this and make it something you can do and look forward to. Because most hiring people don't want to hire people.
Yeah. No, it can be a very scary process and something you just kind of want to get over with. So, okay. So talk us through it. Walk me through a hiring process. So you've sent me, and I want to mention you've written this and created this great document, a PDF that we're going to share afterwards, and will be linked to within the blog post that I make directly. That walks us through a hiring process and kind of shows us, all right, here are the things to do, here's some questions to ask. But walk us through. Tell us about this process and what you do that you think works best.
Sure. Let me start out even before the process begins. And I think it's all about the mindset. One of the things I tell people is hiring is a mindset. And if you have a high growth company, for example, one of my clients, small company, $20 million company, in the next year hired 155 people in 1 year
Oh, wow.
in sales through this hiring process. So I think part of the secret of success is putting it into a process, but also taking some of the pressure off the owner. No one, if you talk to 1,000 hiring managers that make hires, 50% of them think they've made a bad hire in the last 2 years.
Oh, wow. That's pretty bad. Might as well flip a coin.
Well, that's exactly right. So how do we change the odds for you, your people that are listening to the call today? Because I think that's really the first place we want to start is let's make it some fun. Let's have some fun with it. But let's also look at it from the point of view is what makes it different? Well, I'll tell you, the first thing you want to think to yourself when you're hiring people is not to think day one. Most small business people are in a fire and they're calling for help. And I understand that. But I think the service they do for themselves is ultimately they just put more gasoline on the fire.
Okay.
So they think I'm really good at this. Most people don't go in thinking I'm bad at hiring people. And most people don't think, well, this is something I should really develop some skills in, because especially as a growing business, it's critically important to know what you're doing well and then correct, because no one's going to be good at this perfect out of the box, even me. Every client's different and every situation's different. So let's look at it from not day one, which is what so many people do, is I bring a person in and they got to be ready today, but let's move it out a year. What's day 365 look like?
Okay.
So if we do that to start with, we take some of that pressure off. The second is there's a rumor in the market that employers are in charge of hiring. That's not true anymore. And especially if you're hiring skilled positions, and let's say you're hiring an accountant, a salesperson, or a production manager even. Any of those positions, all of them need certain kinds of skills.
Right.
But most of them, what you have, most small business people do and entrepreneurs do is they kind of think they are great at interviewing. So it's the same thing every time over and over again. Well, it doesn't take long to find out that's not working. And it doesn't take time to figure out that ultimately your success is going to ride on not just what you can ask that person, because, you know, I'm always amazed. They what happens is they go immediately to sell, you know, especially if it's an entrepreneur, a small business owner, a very successful salesperson. They're so good at selling. So what do they do in an interview? They immediately, I like this person. They're real. Let's sell them on why they should come to work for my company. And I think the best thing you can do is slow the process down a little bit. Okay, going in, just make sure you're clearly taking time. The other thing is rely on other people to help you. One of the things I've always recommended to most of my clients who are, let's say, over $5 million in revenue, is the CEO is not even involved in the first interview process. They're really going to be set up to be the CEO. There's somebody who's the manager, the boss, because that's who they're ultimately going to be to this employee if you have more than 5 employees.
Right.
So set the conversation up so that you put a team of people together and you start working your way through that process.
Okay. You know, something you said that interested me. You said, okay, don't think day one, think day 365. So maybe you could expand a little bit more about that. What do you mean when you say think about day 365?
Sure. What's the bigger picture? What's the outcome you want from the hire? What's the result you're looking for? What's the ongoing result? You know, so many people go out and hire, and I'll use as a perfect example of sales or marketing. Look, I need a sales and marketing person today, and I need sales today. And the first thing they do is they go out and say, look, today I need a salesperson, and I'll put up with almost anything from that salesperson to be successful. That's critical, right? So, and we've all worked with prima donnas, and we've all worked with companies, and we've sat there and said, how did this person get hired besides that he's related?
Right.
And the second piece is we tend to hire people who we are like. So if you thought of your business a year from now, not in firefighting mode, but really what this business looks like a year from now, even if you just spend a couple minutes thinking about that in advance. And the third part of that is really to get other people engaged in the conversation, get other people on your team involved so that they're better at kind of giving the potential candidate a better view of what's really like to work with Tripp. You know, I mean, what is Tripp like? Is he a prima donna? Is he an easy guy to work with? What's he look for? You can't say that without sounding really very pompous.
Right.
Having people say it or ask questions around it, which we're going to talk a lot about questions because I think it's so critical.
Yeah.
The other part of day 365 is I want people to get out of the mode of firefighting and get in the mode of proactively looking for people. I had an old boss, and we were a small company, 15 people. And we'd go out to restaurants, and he discovered that every salesperson he ever hired that was any good were waitresses or waiters before they went to work there. Now, there were two reasons for that. And this is the lesson, though, for the small business owner. One is it was a great way to get to know people and see people in their natural environment. The second is he always had a pipeline of people. So when he had enough growth in the company, he could just add another person. He had a whole pipeline of 3 or 4 people behind him. He had people, he had interns, he had all these other things. And I said, why do you do this? I mean, your job would be so much easier if you didn't have an intern.
Yeah.
It would be so much easier if you didn't have a sales professional, a pipeline. And he said, no, you have to understand, I'm building something that's going to be valuable to sell 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Now, 10 years is a long time today.
Mm. Yeah.
but it's still a good perspective to look at what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the mindset. And I think finally, I'd wrap the final piece of that is understand there's never a deal that's coming down the road that's so important that you have to hire them today.
Yeah.
And ultimately, my experience with all these people is the people who are really successful at it slow the process down.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy on one interview to get really good and come through and be very energetic and enthusiastic. But when you're on a second or third interview, you're kind of tapped out a lot of people's depth.
Yeah.
and then you really know who you're hiring. Because that's your job. Your job is not to say, I'm going to hire a perfect person. That's the wrong mindset. There are very few companies and people that are perfect.
Yeah.
But you could hire somebody and understand what you're going to need to do. And also, the final piece of this mindset is know who you are. Like in my case, I love to develop people. Yes. So I can go out and hire a person off campus, a 21-year-old person, and really bring them up to speed relatively quickly. But if you're a person who hates training people or you don't like talking to people, which happens if you're a CPA firm, for example, you don't like to talk to people, you want to do the work.
Yeah.
Know who you are and don't try to sugarcoat it when you're talking to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
those are the things I think that start.
Man, yeah, you got a lot of good stuff in there. One thing that that really stuck out to me was talking about getting the whole team involved in hiring, because I think sometimes it's easy to like you said, to be in firefight mode and say, okay, just get this person on, I'll interview them. You guys don't worry about it. So do you recommend like group interviews, or how do you recommend going about getting the team involved in that?
Well, we're going to talk about that in step one, but one of the things I think is you have to let people know that's part of their job.
Yeah.
Part of what happens to businesses is that they get siloed. Look, I'm in production. I'm not going to worry about it. I don't have to talk to the salesperson. Why would that matter? Until that salesperson comes in the first day with an order and it's due tomorrow, and he didn't talk to you beforehand, and now he's your problem as well as the the customers. So part of it is getting people more and more involved, and we're going to talk a little bit about how you do that. But the other thing I'd say, you always want to get people building skills. Okay. And you always want to develop and delegate. I call it developmental delegation. Mm-hmm. I don't just delegate because I don't want to do something. I delegate because I want to make other people better at what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I like that.
Yeah. So when you say to someone, I'm doing this because I'm trying to help you grow, I know it's not so easy to interview people. And the second is you've got to remember, depending on who you're interviewing for, some people are terrible interviewers. Yeah. But they can do the job forever and do it really well. Mm-hmm. So I try to get my clients, for example, when I talk to them, is look, let's look at them and remove the mask. Let's get rid of this thing that I'm interviewing you and I'm the most important person here. You have to convince me to hire you, to really get under the surface and say, who are you? What do you like doing? What are you good at? And is there a natural complementary relationship we can have together, working together, versus trying to be even my best clients who have national recognition, not global recognition, right? Don't try to put on a flashy suit to impress people if you're going to come to work every day in jeans.
Yeah, right.
Jeans today, then later on when they kind of say, "Wow, he was really formal when I met him, and now he's somebody different." So.
Okay, well, let's talk about those questions, because you'd written some really interesting stuff in the Hiring for Growth PDF that you sent me, and you talked about especially like not doing these kind of broad questions and vague questions that people can kind of get away with repeating your answer back to you and kind of slide past. So how do you dig deeper with your question, with your line of questioning during an interview?
Well, there are two ways to do that. One is you really get good at interviewing, and you're navigating out of curiosity. Mm-hmm. And you genuinely don't want to be. Have you ever had or you're interviewing yourself and you're sitting here and you're going through a set of rote questions, exactly what I have to ask, and you're not really curious and you're just hoping to get through that interview. Yeah. So, the mindset on, look, I'm curious about who this person is. And to prepare for that, I'm always surprised, even today, with as much that's out there, most interviewers don't spend much time preparing for their interviews.
Oh, okay.
They kind of grab the resume on the way out into the meeting, and they're going to interview right in there.
Yeah.
I have a rule with all my clients and say, look, you've got to read it at least twice. The first time you're reading it quickly just to kind of see the context of who they are and what they're doing so that you can start to set up some questions in your mind. And the second time, I actually have you write on the resume, here's a question I want to ask about this particular thing. And try to pick something on each of their jobs, that they've internships or their work history, that they go in and you can talk specifically about some questions about it. Now that you've had some things identified in advance of the interview, if you have a team of people, what I always do is I get my different people to ask the same question over and over again.
Yeah.
Now, here's why. The first time you get it, it might throw you for a loop. Tell me about yourself. That's a tough question to ask if you're asking a 55-year-old person. Right? Where do I start? Well, that's what they really should say to you is, where do I start? Where would you like me to start, Tripp? But that's not what happens, Adam. Most people just say, okay, I got these questions and I'm going to go through them form by form. The second part of this is what's interesting, and can you get other people in the interview to ask the questions? So see if they're improving.
Yeah.
See if they have different answers. I've had people where I've had small business people, 3 people interview and had 3 separate different answers from the same person. I'm not recommending hiring that person because we're not hiring multiple personality.
Well, yeah, that's a different department.
Right. So part of it is getting that prepared. The second is understand what the responsibilities are of the job. I'm always surprised that, one of my tricks I always teach small business guys and men and women, because I'm a farmer, people, to go out and look at job descriptions from some of their competition. What do they describe the salesperson's job? And then cut and paste it into a Word document and then kind of wordsmith it to match their stuff. Don't spend hours and hours. I've had a CEO of a very successful company, about $50 million company, who sat there and literally sat for 2 days writing a job description.
Oh my gosh.
He was because he's a perfectionist.
Yeah,
he's like,
yeah.
I need the right words. I said to his HR person, look, take that away from him. He's going to delegate that away. And second of all, just go up and find some descriptions and send them those and say, put text next to it, and we'll put it in a format for you.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. So know what the job description should be. Then say to yourself, what are the outcomes I want? What are the results I'm looking for from this person? So when I interview, I'm asking a person a specific question. First, I'm going to ask them in a more general sense, and like an onion, peel it back.
Yeah.
So if you take this information and start to pull it back and start asking some follow-up questions behind it. Now, you don't have to answer, a lot of people write 25 questions I have to cover in an interview.
Right.
I think a good interviewer can ask 5 questions and then ultimately get all the information they need in those 5 questions if they've thought before. If they're just going from the hip, they get to the 5th question, there's more time because they're just rolling through it.
Yeah.
So get prepared that way. And I think the other part of this is when someone says to you, I'm a high energy person.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard that. I'm sure you in an interview. Oh, I have a lot of energy. I like to work hard and I'm incredible. Okay, help me understand what you think high energy means.
Yeah.
If you're talking to an introvert or somebody who's working on a plant floor and some detail-oriented work, their energy may be a little bit more than a turtle. And that's okay, because that's the kind of person that does that job well. You don't want your proofreader to be a person who reads things at 300 words a minute.
Yeah.
So make sure you pick things and duties, and make sure you dig into the things that are going to be critical elements, and don't let people just leave things hanging. And the final flaw, that most people make in interviewing is once they think, well, this person's breathing, is still breathing, or 10 minutes in the interview and they're still breathing.
Right.
Let's sell them our job. Don't sell it until you're certain that the person can do the job and you're really interested. However, this is where it gets kind of weird. It becomes more of an art than just a science.
Yeah.
The art is you want people to like you. You want people to like you in that interview. Even if you don't hire them, you want to leave a positive impression on. For example, I have several clients who wouldn't hire me when I was very young.
Yeah.
Hired hundreds of people from me in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But one of the things they learned was I taught my clients, and I always do myself, is I want you to be excited about joining my team.
Yeah.
Look, that's the other part of this is it's a direct reflection on how prepared you are in that interview, is how prepared you will be as a leader.
Yeah.
So the other thing is you're not going to hire everybody you interview. I know that's a surprise to small business. Many times do. They try to say, what's the best fit for this person?
Yeah.
Well, here's my question. I think if you have good skills and you have the right attitude, you can do almost any job in a small business.
Right.
Depending on where your business is, though, you may not be able to afford that timeline.
Yeah.
So make sure that when you talk to people that you leave them positive disposed to your company, because they could be your next best client.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So
I think that's one thing, we were talking a little bit about this yesterday, but that's one thing that that we forget is there's marketing going on here too. When we are interviewing people, now what you told me about a company who said they're going to spend more money marketing to potential employees than they're going to spend marketing their business to the general public.
correct. I would prefer not to say the company, but everyone would know who they are. But
Yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah.
a fast food restaurant chain.
Yeah.
And 10 years ago, I sat in a meeting with a bunch of HR executives, and the vice president of HR, senior person there, said, we will probably spend more money in 5 years from now trying to attract people to work in our business than we spend marketing our products to the general public.
Yeah. That's
think about that.
That's crazy, but I think it speaks to this this thing that I love it when it comes up as an article, but I think it's really true that our best resources are people, and that we need to invest in our employees, and it's not just bring someone in the door and get them to do the job, because two people can do the job, and one person, you're going to have a very different experience than with the other one. So I think that like you said, it's easy to say everything is on fire, the business is burning down, I need someone now. And like you said, this is something that that is really, really important.
Well, part of it is I think you just have to step back enough to see what you're seeing and make better decisions. So, when we talk about prepare yourself to become better at hiring, it's more about you. I mean, one of the things that, especially if you're dealing with entrepreneurs and small business owners who are very good salespeople, most of them, they can sell it better than anybody.
Right.
The problem is they tend to hire people just like they are. And then they start to want problems because they're so lopsided. The organization doesn't have anybody doing any detail work, but you have some great salespeople out in the field selling all the work they can find because they're really good at it.
Yeah.
So I think you have to really look at what's going on, and that's preparing yourself for the story. As you talk about attracting people, a large portion of the day, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, is this idea of having a website up and then making it very hard for me to find your jobs on that website. So if I'm interested in your company, I found out I know who you are, you have a good reputation, make it easy for the potential employee to find it.
Yeah.
And make it easy for that to be candid, especially as a small business. You can so much contrast yourself to the huge companies just by being good at interacting with the people on the front and making them feel like you're not just another resume.
Yeah.
I can tell you, having managed huge companies with thousands of employees, the trick is every person you meet has to feel personally like you've connected with them. And I think that's one of the advantages of a small or mid-sized company. You can do that effectively by just being who you are, because these big guys are really bad at it.
Right.
But the other is they put you through a system. Most of these big companies, and maybe that's the other thing, is if you want to see how hard it is to get hired, go into some of your competitors' websites and try to apply for a job there. And you can't. They won't want you in. I had one of my CEO clients of a multi-billion-dollar company said, "Go apply for this job. I want to hire you." I said, well, I'm not sure that's such a good idea, but okay, I'll go. 2 hours later, they know everything about me except what I'm making and earning, which ask it the final question, but they didn't connect to me. There was no personal interaction with it, and it took me 2 hours. And if I'm employed, which is the other thing I'd say to you, as a small business owner, it's hard. I know you're working a lot of hours, but you can make such a big difference by making your first 1 or 2 interviews off hours, 5 o'clock on an afternoon, versus taking a person and making them take time off from work to go interview with you several times, especially if you're going to have a 2 or 3 step interview process. So think to yourself, what can I do to be more hospitable in bringing people through the interview process?
Yeah. In a lot of ways, it's just good customer service. I mean, make it easier.
Well, it is, but I think a lot of people fail to realize, especially if you're look. Here's the other secret no one likes to talk about. There's as much pressure on the person interviewing as there is on you.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm good at this. There's no pressure here. Your handshaking. I think that's the other part of this is understand there's pressure on you to perform in that interview. So pick the times you do best. Pick time. Look, I used to interview people when I was in smaller companies. I'd interview people over lunch, over breakfast, over dinner, but never try to take them out of the job until I had that person I really wanted to put in with my team to meet. So it might even be one or two interviews. And an interesting way of adding to that, I guess I'd say, is the other part is if you have a multi-step interview process, think about giving the person some homework.
Yeah.
Our company, how would you sell it?
Yeah.
That's a really great question. And see, look, I'll tell you what, before you leave today, I would like to give you a little bit of homework. It's not hard, but I would like to get your thoughts next time we get together in person about how you might sell this service or how you would go about doing your job or what you might change about what you know about us.
Yeah.
Give them something, let them prove and see how they work. Let's see how their problem solving skills are in real time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's too easy to just base everything off the verbal part. And I mean, and some companies do that. You'll see them, they'll have tests for specific skills, but I think like what you mentioned is more interesting. Have them do something off the cuff that requires some real, critical thinking skills.
Well, and I think part of it is realizing the pressure in the job. I mean, when I interview doctors, surgeons, I probably put a little bit more pressure on them than I might put on the person who's answering my phone. But maybe, only maybe, because the first person and first impression, that's the thing I think people need to do is kind of figure out what are those intangibles of that job that that will set you apart. Look, if you're in an industry, like I'm in IT, right? So a lot of the people I work with don't talk very well.
Yeah.
They're not very good communicators. And they don't hide their disdain for normal human beings very well. So if you want to test them in an interview, you can say to someone that's interviewed with 3 or 4 of your people, who do you really think that should be leading the team from your perspective?
Yeah.
Which is a great question.
Yeah.
But it also puts some pressure on them, right? Because their political skills go on, and that's, they start to drown. And ultimately, by asking some good questions that way, you can find out an awful lot about what it is. And you can also get a different impression of people you're working with.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, which kind of leads to what the other question a lot of times goes with this: how do you figure out what the job entails?
Yeah.
I think you ask the person who's doing the job, but think 365. So if you have a company, you have someone answering your phone for you, example, right now, who's really only got to really worry about 3 people getting the call. Today, it's 3 people. A year from now, it could be 15.
Right.
So how do they multitask? Is that something that look for future skills?
I like that. Okay, so I've got a question on here that I think is pretty relevant about hiring for management. So it's one thing to hire for a position where you're not in charge of people, but it's very different to hire for a management position. So how is that different? What should you look for? I mean, can you just take a great salesperson and say, okay, you're great at sales, now manage all the salespeople?
I wish we could, right? But it works so seldom. It's almost like a legend. The legend of the guy who went from top salesperson to sales manager successfully.
Right.
It happened. It's a legend in a book somewhere. I'm sure it can.
I promise it took place.
Right. So, but part of it, I think, when you're hiring management, you have to look for different skills. For example, I think if you're the manager of a company and you're hiring another manager, you need to see if they have complementary capabilities to you. Today we're really moving towards more of a team approach to everything. Yeah. So when you interview a manager for what they do, you have to put some pressure on them probably to see how they work. Look for specific examples where they've done well, and then ultimately the other piece of that is to understand what this sounds terrible, but so many companies present their company as being finished.
Yeah.
And wonder why people won't come to work for them. Yeah. Because there's no opportunity to grow, personal growth. So what you want to do when you hire a manager is, you're looking for different qualities. I'll tell you the way I look at it. And one of the books I use a lot, and I teach people to use it specifically, especially in fast growth companies, is about emotional intelligence. Yeah. I really think that's the defining skill, because you can put anybody with emotional intelligence in almost any situation, and they'll handle it well. Now, the caveat is that may not handle it the way you would.
Yeah.
right. But they will handle it well, and that's what you're looking for, because you don't want a clone of you, or you can hire your son. Yeah. You want somebody, or daughter. You want somebody who ultimately is different enough from you and also has the skills and strengths. Now, I'm a strength-based guy.
Mhm.
I think that you can overcome almost anything if you find and work with people in a positive way and an
Yeah.
appreciative way of what they bring to the table. It just becomes then, and we'll talk about that in a second, it just becomes critical to understand your real environment. And it's nothing to do with your candidate.
Yeah.
That's what I think people fail to the difference between a Warren Buffett CEO, for example,
Yeah.
which I've worked with 35 of them,
Right.
in some big companies, and some really small ones, a $50 million company in Worcester, Ohio. The difference is that Warren understands his job is to manage and coach people.
Hmm.
Most small business people never get that. Their jobs are to get results. Their jobs are to get outcomes. No, it's to develop the people around you and help them grow.
Yeah.
And if you do that well enough, you'll always have great people.
Yeah. And you know
Right?
what?
So
Oh, go ahead. Oh, okay. Oh, I thought you had something more to say. So I was just thinking
I just thought that was brilliant. What do you mean?
So I've been thinking as you've been talking, there's kind of this one issue that I think we're kind of almost talking around, but it sounds like a lot of the time it's control that is the problem here. I want to have I don't want to bring someone on who's different from me because I'll lose control, or I won't be able to say, that I want someone who's going to do this basically the same thing that I would do, just be a clone of me over here. I don't want someone who's going to have some completely different solution that I would never think of. And so how do you let go of that control and allow your people to grow and to push the boundaries that you can't push on your own?
I think I think about control and entrepreneurs, they almost should be in the dictionary right next to each other, right? I mean, successful entrepreneurs are very controlling by the nature,
Right.
so it is natural to not let go of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other answer, though, is understanding inherently you can't control it, and especially when you start to go across generations. I mean, if you're 55, like myself, I'm in my 50s, and if I'm talking to someone who's 30, I have a whole different worldview on what I'm hoping they would like, and I probably remember my own past much more, inaccurately than most people. So the whole idea is you got to get a real perception of who you are and what you're looking to bring on board. Let me tell you, I actually share this on the sheet. I think the other secret to let go, get control, is to be feeling like you are in control by understanding what you need to do. So, for example, I have 3 whole categories when I put together my wants to hire managers for my clients. One is the must-haves.
Yeah.
My clients are paying me a lot of money to figure out what they must have.
Yeah.
And then I say, okay, let's draw that out. I make sure I confirm it with people. When I'm a manager, or when I've been in companies, I've been in a lot of companies, I make sure I have my must-haves down, and I get buy-off on everybody on the team. I got to have that, right? What do you think, Bill? What do you think, Sheila? What do you think, Susan? Are these must-have skills? And I really listen very closely to that. The second is I have like-to-haves. To have a little bit of skill, a little bit more bench strength in my management team. This person could step into a leadership role almost immediately. Like to have that, but I might not have the budget for that.
Mm-hmm.
So then I have to kind of give and take and have a little negotiation in my own mind of what I think I'd like to have and what I'm looking for. And how does that relate to what you're doing? As the manager, what are you doing in this role, and what are you willing to relinquish? I can tell you, any company, you can't micromanage a company more than $10 million in revenue.
Yeah.
That's the number over 30 years of experience. Can't manage anything over 10 million. It used to be a lower number, believe it or not. But now with technology, you can really manage a lot more things without having to have a lot of people.
Yeah, you hear over a lot of shoulders.
Well, think of it this way. 10 years ago, the Inc. 5000 companies created 1 million jobs.
Yeah.
Last year, I think the number was closer to 50,000. And the revenue streams are almost the same.
Yeah.
So technology is changing how we do things. And that's the other part. If you're hiring a manager, you're hiring some potential. If the manager's already done that role and has done it for a long, long time, there's a lot of chance of turnover risk, right? Because they've already got the skills. They already got the T-shirt. They're not really building, and they're bored. And most people at some stage get to the point where when they're bored, they hate their jobs.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was kidding about, go ahead. Say that again.
Oh, I said we would like to avoid the boredom. I mean, that's a job killer right there for sure.
Well, I think the other part of boredom is what bores you might not bore somebody else.
Yeah.
I always say you might have a terrible job. I have a client. I have lots of clients. One of my clients was terrible. They went through and burned out people. I mean, but how do you sell that job to someone? They said, look, if you get your job here, you do it for 2 years and leave, you can go anywhere else you want in the country for a job like it, because they're just that great a program.
Yeah.
But you're going to have a hard time. They're going to run you hard. You got to know what your culture is. You know, we've avoided talking about the big C word today.
Yeah,
culture.
let's bring it up.
Right. It's really critical in a small business to understand your culture, especially in a fast growth company. And sometimes that's perception, not reality.
Yeah.
Look, if you say, look, if I had 10 salespeople, I could sell all day long, but you couldn't produce the operations to support it.
Yeah.
So part of the culture is, look, we have a fast-paced environment. Don't soft sell the disadvantages, because there's always someone who will like that disadvantage.
Yeah.
So we are very stressful here. We work very tight deadlines. You know, work on weekends. There's always somebody who's going through a divorce who doesn't want wants to work somewhere where he doesn't have to go home every day. We kid about it, but you have to take a quick inventory of what's going on here, and what the culture fits. Because I know of a lot of small companies who's the first person in the morning at 6 a.m. is the boss, and the last person to leave the job is at 7 o'clock is the boss.
Yeah.
And he says, why do you think I can do that? And I said, because probably because you own the company. That's probably part of it. But part of it is you set such a bad standard for your company. You need to learn how to manage people.
Yeah.
Which would be the other thing I'd say to people is if you're going to be hiring managers, you got to be pretty good yourself.
Okay. So how does one become good at managing? I mean, sometimes you've got an idea, you've started a business, and you can push that forward, but you don't have the skills as a manager. How does a small business owner go out and get those skills? How do they learn how to manage people?
Well, I think they need to do two things. One is to take an honest inventory. Now, I think I really probably get that. I do a lot of assessments with people.
Okay.
Now, one of the assessments I use is I use a Strength Finder assessment, which is a $20 book. You take the test and it says, here's your 5 biggest strengths.
Yeah.
And you look at it, and even anyone can use that as a tool, a self-development tool. They can say, okay, here's how I get better at it, because the book tells you, here's what you need to do to be better.
Yeah.
But you first got to find a way of testing where you're at right now. Okay. The second thing is there are so many things out there online that you can get online training for almost nothing.
Yeah.
Lynda.com was bought by LinkedIn. Their memberships start at $30 a month.
Yeah. Yeah, that's doable.
Right. So how do you get better at management? You take some classes. A lot of times it comes down to how much time are you willing to invest to become a better person and a manager. But remember, the other part of this is your success is going to be directly driven by your ability to leverage other people. To me, management. One of my early mentors, I had 2 really influential early mentors, and they both came down on management the same place. And that was, you can be a great leader. And everybody out there today talks about leadership, right? Everybody talks about it.
Yeah.
But the companies that really be successful have great managers. If you go to like a Microsoft, or you go to an IBM, or the people who differentiate in the marketplace are the managers. And your employees don't really relate to the CEO anyway in those bigger companies. They relate directly to their manager.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why do I leave the job? Because my manager didn't treat me right. Never hear him saying, oh, the CEO didn't treat me right. No, it's the manager. So your job's got to be, as a manager, is to get good at it.
Yeah.
Or
when people quit jobs, a lot of the time they're not quitting their job, they're quitting.
Well, and I think that's the whole thing. So if you take this and say, your team members, am I a good manager? And I think it becomes down to emotional intelligence, where you have a realistic view of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many people have you met that you talk to and you immediately think, who do you like to work for? And you think to yourself, because you know what he's already displayed in the first 15 seconds you've met, but over the first 5 minutes, it's very clear to you what he's doing as a manager, and it's very clear how he treats his employees.
Yeah. Look,
you're always, one of the weird things about being a good manager is you're always on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you do says more than what you say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Especially in a smaller company, it's so critical that you have a good manager. And it's so critical that you hire people who want to make other people better.
Yeah.
This is where most bad sales hires go wrong. They hire people, like they say, oh, I got a #1 salesperson, he should be the manager.
Yeah.
He's probably the worst person to be the manager because he's very egocentric.
Yeah.
Not to say salespeople are egocentric. I got to be careful, right? But they are. That's why they can take rejection all day long. The skills they have. It's like when I look at the people who are succeeding in certain jobs, you can tell it. They're good coaches. I think 10 years ago, I was involved in coaching 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and people thought I was out of my mind. This is never going to take off. But today, because there's such a lack of raw talent in the workplace, because it's spread out so wide and a lot of people are retiring, you've got to be a player coach. You've got to be able to sit there and motivate people. These, managers are good motivators. And so many people say, oh, you should be inspired by yourself. That's the wrong answer. I just think you have to help inspire people, but you have to hire people who are inspirable.
Yeah.
And that don't drag on you. If a person hasn't got the level of motivation to chase you in an interview, or say, do the things you need to see in an interview, he's not going to do it when he's on the job. She's not going to do it when she's working with you.
Right.
So take that interview and say, what am I learning about this person? Is it, I call the hottest things of all candidates is what I call my Christmas in July list.
Yeah.
Which means the person walks through the door and they're a great manager already. They just happen to be displaced because something happened. Their company got sold. They got fired, which is an interesting point as well. Don't always just say, oh, they got fired. There must be a reason.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know how bad the managers are out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about hiring for growth. How do you pick the right people? I mean, we've talked about the interview process a little bit, but is there a way to kind of target these people who are really going to help you grow your business as opposed to just take care of what needs to be taken care of?
Well, yeah, I think first of all, you can let's avoid a couple things, and then let's keep moving down the road with it. One of the things you want to avoid is, say, if you're a high growth company and you try to hire from a big company, you're going to have a problem.
Okay.
There's going to be a culture clash. It's almost like an album, right? I mean, there's a person who does really well at Microsoft or an IBM or JP Morgan Chase or any of the big companies I've worked with in the past. That person has a lot of specialized skills, not a lot of generalized skills.
Yeah.
So that person might never have written a sales proposal. Now you're hiring a person, you say, I'm going to hire this person from ABC company.
Yeah.
I don't get in trouble with my clients. ABC company. ABC says, everything you do is about selling. I'm going to have proposal writers around you, grant writers, marketing people, copywriters, everything around you.
Yeah.
Of course, that means the small company is probably going to want to hire that person because they're coming from ABC company.
Right. Yeah.
They had great numbers at that ABC company. They
really impressed with their ABC products.
That's right. So part of it is understanding what that means. The second thing you can do to avoid that a lot of times is ask people about their energy levels.
Yeah.
Energy is, for example, I'm a very competitive person.
Yeah.
So I can go days at a time, weeks at a time, months at a time, sometimes years at a time without a vacation because I'm a high energy person.
Yeah.
However, that drives a lot of my bosses crazy. And especially if you're a small business where you're trying to contain it, it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
But if you have that energy, so you say to someone, look, tell me some of your outdoor activities, what the things you'd like to do. Like in my case, I climb mountains. So, you say, okay, what do you do here? That's interesting. Besides outrun clients who are chasing me because they didn't like the last hire. But I think that's part of it. You have to test for that. You have to ask and look for behavior outside the workplace that validates what they're telling you.
Yeah.
If you want to help somebody better, if you want to understand what a person does on their off time, ask them.
Yeah.
And what are some of your hobbies? And if they say, well, I like to collect stamps, it's a warning.
Yeah, that doesn't line up with high energy very well.
No, it does. Excuse me.
Okay.
But I think the other part is understanding that high growth companies make mistakes.
Yeah.
And you can avoid most of them, I think, by using my simple rule of slowing the hiring process down.
Yeah.
But the second is you have to get good at it. I mean, if you said to me, your number one skill in a high growth company is being your growth will be only limited by one factor, and that will be your ability to hire good people.
Yeah.
If I said that to you, just like I did now, most owners will say, I get it. But how you go about doing that and how you actually live those things are really kind of critical.
Yes.
So that's what I say to you is make sure you know this is look, most big company CEOs will say the number one job they have is develop their leadership team.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many thousands of employees they have. It really comes down where the leverageability comes from their direct reports who can do the same thing to their direct reports, to their direct reports, to their direct reports.
Yeah.
So you've got to make it transferable. The other thing is you can start to put systems in place to protect you from yourself. Because really, most of the time when you make a mistake, it's because it's something you've done wrong, not something that they've done wrong.
Yeah.
It's you've been too quick to hire. You haven't asked the right questions. You're so too early. Your people have been so blown away by an individual, and no one's asked the question, why do we all think this person is so great?
Yeah.
Well, because once they get, no one wants to rate. One of the things I always say, I've always been lucky enough to have passive aggressive behavior around me.
Yeah.
So when I have that, I always look for the root cause. And that sometimes that is if everybody's saying, yeah, we should hire this person, the CEO's job or the president of the company's job is to stop the bus. Say, why? What's making this person seem so exceptional? And is that exceptional going to be able to show itself in our job?
Yeah.
So take the time to really look and evaluate at this. The other thing is, if you know you're going to hire like a lot of salespeople,
Yeah.
and then invest a little money in education for yourself and some instruments that can help you do it. Then, today you can get a sales, like I said, you can literally get a strength finder, a test book for $20.
Mm-hmm.
You can get one for sales. They actually have them for sales. They actually have them for entrepreneurs. These books are $20 a piece, and you give them the book, and it's only used one time, and it comes back with an assessment of that person's personality, all the things about it, what they do well and what they don't.
Yeah.
I used to, when I had a small sales team of 8, small, right? Everything's relative. 8 people. Before I hire them, I'd make them take the test. And then I'd go to lunch with them, and I'd sit over lunch and say, hey, they say you're really good at this, or you're really good at that. Can you give me a specific example? And I always get a good example from work. And I said, tell me about when you're at home. What do you like at home? And if a person's very, a good salesperson's great communicator.
Right.
But when you start to ask about home, they're not prepared. What home? I'm not even home.
So it's surprising. I think people don't expect that.
No. Yeah. And so that's where I think the other thing is it gives you a real 360 view of who you're hiring, because in a smaller company, hiring the wrong person in a big company can cost $1 million.
Yeah.
Hiring the wrong person in a small company could cost you your company, because it does 2 things. It sets a standard and it poisons everybody else.
Yeah.
Which is the other trick of hiring that I always tell people is learn to fire people.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because we've talked this whole time about, all right, bring them on. So what do you do when you make that mistake and you have a bad hire and it's poisoning your company? How do you, what are the steps to take to make sure the firing process goes well?
Well, Adam, I've never done that. I think my clients say we spend millions of dollars on Tripp's bad hiring decisions.
Yeah.
No, right. I actually think what you can do is if you've done everything else right, and the thing we're going to give them gives you a lot of that information. But then you start to say, let's measure things, let's look at things, let's evaluate. Look, the biggest failure you can make, I believe, as a manager, is to leave a person in a job too long when they're failing.
Yeah.
Without giving them some direction.
Yeah.
Now, what that means is, in a week, I always tell people, I onboard people. That's one of my solutions to firing people, is onboard people. So I really know who I'm getting on my team after I've hired them. Yeah. And then spend a lot of time making sure that they feel very comfortable coming into my office or my sales manager's office and talking specifically about what they're doing. So let's put a formal onboarding process in place.
Okay.
The second thing is we let everybody around know that we're just looking for feedback. Mm-hmm. One of the things you have to do is, if you're a small business owner, is not be super cop, but really be super boss.
Yeah.
And that means, look, I'm looking for feedback. What do you think? Asking other people who actually interacts with these people. The other thing is, if you're hiring somebody in a small company, and it's maybe your first, manager, or might be your first salesperson you're hiring outside your own family.
You're right.
No, I'm hiring my daughter because she's a great salesperson because she has the right last name. I think that part of that, though, is you can go out in the field with them. A part of this is how active do you want to be engaged in that relationship, but that also tells me the speed of your hire. If you're going to go out and have to coach somebody the first 30 days, don't hire 5 people and wonder why 4 leave.
Yeah.
Take one and hire them, and say, look, we're going to hire the first person, watch what I learned, develop myself, figure out what skills are missing, find out if there's training out there. Look, there's so much available. Training available. Someone wanted me to learn a lesson, a language. Mm-hmm. For one of my classes from Germany. And they said, we want you to learn a new language. Would you be open to having that? And I said, I'm not a language guy.
Yeah.
But I could try. And I went out and found an online course for $20 a month, great courses plus online. Mm-hmm. And there's 5 language choices I can pick from. Okay. And it's all video. It's just a high level class. But this is what you have to do as a successful entrepreneur. You have to say, I can't do all of it.
Hmm.
So what are the critical elements I should be doing of this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And part of it is most big companies have training programs. That's one of the reasons they're big companies. And they had them even when they were small companies.
Hmm.
So you have to say, are there low cost alternatives you can offer people? And one of the ways I get a lot of mileage, especially if a small sales team, 2 to 5 people, let's say,
Yeah.
I actually have them train each other. I have
Oh,
them train each other.
that's fun.
Right? So you say, okay, what's Ron good at? Or what's Bill good at? Or what's Bob good at? And then you give them a format, 1-page document saying, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a huddle every week. Twice a week, we're going to do it. You're in charge this week. You're taking this topic.
Hmm.
And watch them develop the training. Now, they may not be as good as you are. It doesn't matter because they'll get better at it.
Yeah.
Part of it is if you're hiring people and saying, I want a finished product, you're going to fail. It's just natural. But if you say, I'm going to develop people, but the other part is look for things. I had a person who I had working for me in a very small company, and she was very caustic.
Hmm.
And I only saw it when she thought I wasn't around.
Oh,
So so because I'm the boss, she treated me
right.
completely
Yeah.
different because that's the other law, right? Treat me great, right? I don't mind. And you've got to be well enough to be able to watch for little telltale signs. Or the other thing is sometimes it's like kids, they'll push you right to the very edge.
Yeah.
If they know that the first week you have, and I have a mentor who said, when you have the first meeting with them, the first week is ask how many sales calls have they had, and put a little box, not a whole big box, because the big box takes a whole story. The little box is a number.
Right.
But also, if you want to avoid firing more, you have to put qualities down that you want them to have. If you say, look, I expect 10 sales calls a week.
Yeah.
And now you get the first week they come in with 6. You say,
Right.
what was the problem? What did we miss? First week, I know it's new to the job, we maybe a high number. The second week he hits 5, you know that you've got a person that has some problems and they need some coaching.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure your people understand part of their job is to help that person be successful. Look, the team success is so critical, and we're working in an age where teams are such a critical element of business success.
Yeah.
The number one skill you should hire people for is having team skills. Can they communicate effectively? Can move with other people? Do they work well with others? How do they come across when they may have a problem? You can ask some of those kind of interview questions, but when you're faced with a reality of hiring the wrong person, you have to make a decision on what you want to do. And sometimes it's a tough decision, but that should be made by you, no one else.
Yeah.
I think there's the owner of the business, as a small business, you should be making the call on who gets terminated.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think we could talk almost forever about this, but we're running up on time a little bit. So, any final thoughts on hiring, things that you want to discuss before we get out of here? Things that are really critical that you think our viewers should know?
No, I think that, yes. The one thing is a simple word: prepare.
Okay.
You're going to have today, when you get the sheets from me, if you go and get the sheets, you'll see an awful lot of preparation. That's really the secret of success here.
Yeah.
If you prepare the way you need to and do the things you need to do, preparation can get you 90% of there. And if you do it a lot, you get better at it. I mean, at first it's a little awkward, but strive on.
Yeah.
These things and know the systems work. These systems have been tried by thousands of companies in the past. These systems are proven, not something I kind of wrote up as I sat there in a document where I've never interviewed anybody and
Right.
or never had my own team of people working for me. So trust the system to work for you that we've shared with you. And the final thing is, especially if you're going to hire a lot of people, start to get some help in it. I mean, there's a lot of people out there offering HR consulting services. And a small company who doesn't have an HR department is probably at a huge disadvantage because they have to produce everything from the ground up.
Yeah.
And to be honest, most entrepreneurs are good at what they do, not at these other things. So
Yeah.
there are a number of solutions that you can find that are low-cost solutions for you to outsource that you can do and have somebody else do, and it will make a big difference.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, that's great. So thank you so much for everything. This has been wonderful, Tripp. So how can people find you if they want to learn more about you, your business? How do they connect with you, find you online and on the interwebs?
Sure. I think the first place you could probably look is at trippbraden.com.
Okay.
Tripp, and it's my name, last name Braden, Braden. Tripp is spelled with 2 P's.com. You can find a lot of information if you're hiring a lot of marketing and salespeople. You can find that at marketleadership.net, which is Market Leadership Journal. When you get there, you'll say, it's not Tripp, it's Market Leadership. That's one of my places.
Okay.
Obviously, if they have questions, they can follow me at Tripp Braden on Twitter.
Right.
So that's another place that they can find me almost always, because we're there almost on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And in worst case, if you want to just have a quick question, you see this video and say, you said something that really irritated me, and he's always saying you can call me at 440-293-8811.
All right, great. Well, I will get all that information on the blog post when I put this together, and that's it. Thank you again so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and look forward to the blog post. Thanks a lot.
Sounds great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Take care.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.